Well, joining me live now is Ukrainian-American Congresswoman Victoria Spartz, a Republican from the 5th District of Illinois. Congresswoman, thanks so much for joining us. We've been hearing there that economy and immigration are two of the biggest issues for voters on this Super Tuesday, but given how extended the US is on many foreign policy fronts at the moment, do you think voters should be paying greater consideration to that area?
Well, actually, Illinois is a closed state, but we're much better than Illinois. Indiana is a much better conservative state, but just go to the issues you mentioned. I think there are a lot of domestic issues that have been neglected for a long time. And unfortunately, under this president, they got even worse. Now we have a serious situation on the border. We have a serious inflation. We have terrible energy policies, and our dependencies on countries like China have not been addressed. So I think people are upset, and you can see that turnouts are going to be high, and I think this is an issue that we have to deal with. We also need to do better on the foreign policy, and I think a lot of my colleagues, including Speaker Johnson, were very clear. We are willing to provide lethal aid to Ukraine, which is actually should be as a loan. We passed 2 years ago, Lend-Lease, which gives better oversight and accountability, and really better way for American people to support this more longer-term wars, which became unfortunately, but was engaged by President Biden. So we have to think about that, but also we need to secure our borders. So I think we're going to be working on providing our own package, and we have to figure out how we can survive through this presidency.
On that package, including aid to Ukraine, Speaker Johnson has not indicated yet if he will or when he will bring that to the House floor for a vote. Do you have any information on that?
Well, listen, we need to go through our appropriation processes this week, but I think after we're done with these appropriations, this is going to be an important discussion for us to have. I think we've been busy, unfortunately, with a lot of our internal negotiations, which a lot of people, including me, are not very thrilled about, but I'm glad to see that our speaker is holding strong on the border security. So that's one of the issues that we'll be discussing, but I think it's going to happen soon.
President Zelensky would say that there really isn't much time, that they're running out of ammunition and that that's threatening the front lines in Ukraine. Can you put a time frame on when you think there might be agreement?
Well, listen, I think the issue of ammunition I raised almost 2 years ago, when we were discussing that we need to actually engage more production of ammunition and really get Ukraine should have gotten the economy and on the war mode. Russia did it, Ukraine didn't do it, Europe didn't do it, and we didn't do it. So we actually had to approve cluster munition, not for fun, because that was the only ammunition we really were able to provide in large quantities. So I think it's a different conversation. What are we going to do now, and how we're going to restructure our industry, and how we can have a more longer-term strategy. But I truly believe our strategy should be more decisive and not as long as it takes, but as fast as we can. And we need to figure out how Ukraine can win this war sooner than later.
Are you concerned about the message that it sends to US allies, Ukraine and others, that promises are made to support an ally but then not delivered upon, as is the case in Ukraine at the moment?
Well, listen, I think President Biden does a lot of promises, but unfortunately he failed the American people and promises what he did. He failed in Ukrainian people where the war is, and the American people with neglecting our internal domestic issues. That's why people are so frustrated, and that's why we're going to have election and people are going to decide. But I think a lot of people, including on the Republican side, understand the importance of what the conflict is, but also understand that we need to have our strategy actions aligned, and we need to put pressure on Europe too. Europe does a lot of grandiose talk, but a lot of countries, and I exclude UK. UK has been much better and actually much more decisive on these issues than any other country in Europe. Baltics were very good at that, Poland, but the rest of the Europe leaves much to be desired.
And Congresswoman, national polls currently are putting Joe Biden and Donald Trump more or less neck and neck, looking ahead to the November polling date. Do you think is that reflective of the race so far?
Well, I think, and as the most important is really what is going to happen in the battleground states. And we can see in most battleground states, President Trump is leading significantly. He's leading with minority voters, he's leading with Hispanic voters, he's leading with young voters. So I think it's a very serious problem, because I think people are now waking up of all mismanagement that happening under this administration. So I think he's a very strong case to win and start governing, because our country truly needs governing, and he's the right person for these times.
Okay, we'll leave it there for the moment. Congresswoman Victoria Spartz from Indiana, thanks so much for joining us on BBC News.